Welcome to the Pitch Your Pick podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into all of the sportsbook, find our favorite plays, and pitch them to each other to find the best plays for each day. Today is February the 21st of 2022, and we have a decent slate of games today. I'm your host, Joe. This is Jer, and we're going to get into it without hitting our mics. All right, so how you doing, my man?
I am great. There's always games to gamble on, which makes it a good fucking day for sports.
All right, so we figured we start off the podcast first by going and looking at our slate of games so we can switch over to this wonderful screen here and check out the front page of ESPN. So we have obviously, no NFL game. Super Bowl just happened. It's nothing crazy. But for the NBA, also nothing going on. We have Team Durant versus Team LeBron last night. It was a great all-star game. So those two picks, not going to be happening. We do have an all right slate of NHL games. Jer here is the one who actually cares and knows about the NFL, so we can hear his opinion, on what these games are looking like today.
Yeah, so we only got 5 games in the NBA tonight, or the NHL tonight. The only one really to note is the Colorado Avalanche against the Boston Bruins. It's two really good teams going up against each other. We might actually be talking about that game later on in the podcast, but the rest of the games in the NHL, they're not very bettable lines, and they're also not great games to watch. So, but we do have 2 plays in the NHL tonight, and we dug deep to find these on this shitty slate, so we'll keep it going.
Yeah, so we also have a all right day in college basketball. That's definitely more of my specialty out here, the NCAA. We had a decent little set last night, Wisconsin, Providence, Purdue, Houston going out tonight, but we actually don't have too many for our Monday night of basketball. We have Indiana, Ohio State. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later. Baylor and Oklahoma State and UCLA for Arizona State. So a fairly weak day of top 25 for college basketball, but we do have some decent overall Division I games. There's one other that we'll get into a little bit later there. For anybody that is into betting the NCAA women's, decent little slate on Sunday night. But for tonight, only one top 25 matchup between Indiana and Iowa, but there's still a relatively all right little slate of games. If you're into any soccer, we have a few on this Monday night, or football for anybody watching overseas. Overall, I think it's a relatively underwhelming one, but there are some other, boxing matches, college sports to go on throughout. We'll see how it all goes. So I guess we'll throw it over to Jarrett, and he can tell us about his NHL picks, where he is going to pitch his pick to myself and see if I actually like it. So we can switch over to our 2 webcam setup and talk about it right now. What do you got?
Okay, so as I was talking about earlier, I said we were going to the Colorado Avalanche and Boston Bruins game.
Okay.
And tonight, the Avalanche will be on the road in Boston. So these are 2 of the top teams in the NHL. The Bruins will be without a top 3 player in Brad Marchand. He's probably the number 1 shit disturber in the league, but he plays a lot of minutes for the Bruins and it provides a lot of value for them. But tonight we're going to be looking at the Boston Bruins team total, and we're going to be betting under on that. So as I said before, they're 2 of the best teams, so it'll likely be leaning towards a lower scoring game. The Boston Bruins are the least profitable team to the over on their team total in the NHL at 18-31. And they're also the least profitable team to the over on their team total at home at 8-18. They're playing against the Avalanche, who rank 12th in goals allowed and 10th in shots allowed. So they don't give up a lot of chances. The total has gone under in the last 4 Avalanche games they've played versus a team with a winning record. They're 7-0 in their last 7 road games. And the under has also gone 6-1 in the Avalanche's last 7 games. On the other side, the Bruins are missing top 3 player in Brad Marchand, who as I said before, he's still serving a suspension for punching Tristan Jarry in the face. The total has gone under in the last 3 Bruins games. They're 0-4 in their last 4 following a win. They have also lost their last 4 games as an underdog. Looking at some of their scoring lately, they've only scored 3 goals in 3 of their last 10 games, and we're betting on them to score less than 3 goals. I like those odds. And the only matchup this year, the Avalanche won 4-3 in overtime. However, in that game, Marchand carried the load offensively, scored a goal, and took 5 shots on net. And over the last 10 games, the Avalanche are only allowing 1.9 goals against, and the Bruins are only scoring 1.8 goals. So I'm going to ride the under here for the Bruins, and I'm going to take the Avalanche to roll tonight.
Okay. I see you. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. Now,
there's only one fitting way to start off this podcast, and it's by sweating out an under.
Yeah, I like that he's suspended for punching somebody out. That is, it's typical.
Well,
it's typical.
Since you don't follow hockey, I guess I'll give you the quick rundown. He punched. It was a goalie. First of all, he took a shot. And the goalie made a big save. Not even a big save, a basic save. The goalie said something to him about how about that save. Marchand went into the net, threw a sucker punch off his mask, skated away, and then swung his stick at his mask, and ended up with a high sticking penalty as too. He got a 6-game suspension.
Oh, I love it. That's typical.
Guy's a shit disturber by all means of that word.
All right, I guess we can pitch our picks back and forth. I actually do like that one. Picking the under on a team without their best players, usually a fairly safe bet. Now, I've said I have a bit of a bias towards college basketball and the NBA in general. So this one is relatively where I'm going to find my niche. In the first game, I guess I'll start it off that I talked about us going back to a little bit later, is going to be Indiana versus Ohio State. These are two of the premier defensive teams right now, just in college basketball, with Ohio State actually ranking 9th in Ken Palm adjusted offensive efficiency. And they're also 91 in adjusted defensive efficiency, and they only allow the 13th fewest turnovers per game. So these are two relatively good teams, especially with Ohio State. Indiana is actually a pretty good defensive team themselves. They rank 114th in that adjusted defensive efficiency, and they're actually 47th in scoring defense, and they are 7th in field goal defense, which we can actually check out here. We have field goal percentage defense right here, and Indiana sitting right up there at number 7 through 25 games, only allowing their opponents to shoot 38%. These guys lock it down. They know what they're doing. But Indiana has actually been running into some trouble. If we check out their recent performances, they're not doing so hot. They are 0-4 in their last games without their backup guard. Granted, if you do look at the slate of games that they had, they went against number 18 Illinois, number 17 Michigan State, number 15 Wisconsin, and now have to go against Ohio State. It's not exactly an easy slate of games. They are following Jackson Davis, who has been a hooper this season, but going against Ohio State, who's such a good defensive team, it's actually going to be pretty difficult. Ohio State is a team that shoots 49% from the field and an amazing 37% from the three-point line. It's going to be an interesting game. On top of this, Ohio State just took their first home loss of the season against Purdue over the weekend, which is going to be a tough one for them to swallow. It was an 81-78 loss against number 6 Purdue, and they're playing home tonight against Indiana, which obviously they're coming back for a vengeance, trying to get that one back on top of them. Now, in the last 8 games, Ohio State is 6-2 against the spread and 5-0 in their last 5 on Monday nights. Interesting stat. Whereas Indiana is 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 games and are 2-11-1 in their last 14 road games. It's not going to be an easy one for Indiana. Just going against the statistics, it's not looking like they can do it. But for Indiana's credit, I guess we should say, they did actually take the last matchup against Ohio State in a pretty convincing fashion. So you got to give them that one. 67-51 in this previous matchup. I mean, it was really just down to Indiana absolutely locking up on defense. Liddell was only 3-12. That's Ohio State's leading scorer. If they can do that again, it's looking pretty promising. But again, without that backup guard depth and just the fact that Ohio State's playing at home, coming off their first loss of the season at home, not really looking like a fairly convincing one that Indiana can take. So I'm going to have to go with Ohio State covering the spread on this one. I just think that it's way too possible that they get that lead of over 7. The spread is only -7. I think it's pretty convincing that Ohio State can do it. They are fully healthy. They are ready and coming back with a vengeance at home. I think this is going to be an easy one for Ohio State to take by a minimum of 8. Now, there are some alternate spreads you could take, if you only like, above 6, above 7, but I don't think it's too bad to take Ohio State at -7 right here.
Yeah, I actually like that play a lot. looking at it here. I don't know too much about college basketball, but looking at the numbers, it just shows Ohio State, screams Ohio State spread. I'm actually seeing that the current line here, at least in Canada, is -6.5 OSU. I love that even more. For the fact that you get the dribble out at +7, or you get 7 points dribble out at the end of the game. I don't think you can go wrong with that at all.
Yeah, I think last time I checked, it was a -102 for Ohio State. If you actually just went straight money line, it wasn't that bad. Overall, I bet you the bets have, or the odds have changed a little bit. But if Liddell can have his way in the paint against the Hoosiers, it's going to be a tough one for them to win. And even if you just look at who people are picking, it's about 76% Ohio State winning. It's going to be a really tough game for Indiana to come into Ohio State at home against one of the best defensive teams in the country. I don't think they can do it.
Yeah, winning at home or even covering on the road against a team like Ohio State. Tall task. Tall task.
All right, so what is your next NHL pick here?
So I said there was only one way to start this podcast is sweating an under. How about sweating 2 unders? Now we're going to come back into Canada here we're going to see the Seattle Kraken go on the road against the Vancouver Canucks. And we're going to be looking at a team total again, and we're going to be looking at the Kraken's team total, and we're going to be betting under on that as well. So the Kraken have the 27th ranked offense in the NHL. They're going up against the Canucks, who rank 13th in goals allowed. The Canucks are the second best team to the under in the NHL at home at 16-6 to the under, and the Canucks are only allowing 2.80 goals per game at home. Honestly, the Kraken offense really isn't worth talking about. They only score 2.5 goals per game at home. As an underdog, they're only scoring 2.31 goals per game, and over their last 10, they're only scoring 2.30. These guys do not produce scoring chances. They play a very defensive style of hockey, which is the way they built their team from the expansion draft this past season. But it clearly hasn't worked out because they're a terrible defensive team as well. But these two teams have already faced twice this year. The Kraken have only scored 2 goals in both of those matchups. I believe the Canucks took those matchups 5-2 and 4-2. This will be Seattle's 3rd game on the road in 5 days before they go home. So I'm thinking their heads might be back in Seattle, waiting to see their families. Seattle ranks 31 in shots for. Like I said, they don't produce chances. Vancouver's been pretty good defensively as well. As I said, they're only giving up 2.8 goals a game. So when they're not getting scoring chances and the other team's not giving them up, it's pretty hard to score goals. Vancouver is playing pretty well recently. They've won 3 of their last 5. I don't really see this game having a ton of pace back and forth. Neither of these teams play fast. They don't put the puck toward the net a ton. The Canucks like to play with puck and have the puck in their control, whereas the Kraken, they don't really control the puck. Seattle has been one of the worst teams on the road with a record of 7-17. I think this game is just going to be a repeat of the last. I think we might see the total go over, but I'm taking the Kraken to go under just as it has in the last games. The total pushed in the first matchup, and then it went over in the second one, but that was basically due to Vancouver covering it on their own. So I'm riding the Kraken on the under here at -113.
Okay. I like it. Sounds like the Kraken need a little bit of help.
The Kraken, they're an expansion team this year, and their expanded draft. I don't know. The way I saw it is it looked like they were drafting a football team. Everybody over the height of 6'2" and 210 pounds. That met their criteria for their team. It didn't matter their hockey ability.
All right, well, I have a one-up on you. You're picking some unders. How about picking an underdog? Now, I said I'm a basketball guy myself, so we're going to college basketball yet again, but we're going to go for an underdog, not top 25. Because, again, I wasn't really enthralled with a lot of these top 25 matchups that we had today. So we're going to switch it back to the shared screen here. And this matchup that we're actually going to be picking is going to be Boston College versus Florida State. A bit of an interesting game because both of these teams have key injuries to some of their top players. with Florida State and Boston College, which has actually severely hurt their total offensive output right here. Now, this is the game where Florida State is only favored by 1, and that's in large part to the fact that Florida State has a total of 4 7-footers on their squad, including a 7'4" man that mans the paint, and 7-foot Jared Butler, I forget his last name, Butler, who is out there on the perimeter actually chucking threes, and is pretty decent at it. Now, Florida State is a defense that severely lacks in their ability to guard the three-point line, but luckily for them, Boston College is an offense that severely lacks in an ability to hit three-pointers, only hitting 137 total threes through their games this season of 25 games. That's not what you want to see. And they only have one person shooting 40% from the three-point line, just not what you want to look at. Now, this is going to be a battle of the ships, to put it easily. If we check out Florida State's schedule right here, in their last games, they only have 1 in their last 8 coming for a W, and it's a 1-point win above Clemson, where Raquan Evans had to drop 28 to snag that one. They're coming off an 18-point loss against Duke. And then, if we are to pivot over and check out Boston College, it's also not looking very good. They have also only won 1 out of their last 8. They are a 69-56 win over Pittsburgh. Ashton Langford dropped 21. Now, this is going to be a tough one. Now, Florida State has a fairly thin margin of victory. They win, I think they average around 72.8 points per game, but allow 71.3. So they're really struggling on the defensive end, plus those key injuries. They have really been struggling from the line and just shooting in general. Now, Florida State mainly gets their offense to go by forcing turnovers. They usually average around 15 a game, but luckily for Boston College, they only allow 11. They are one of the slowest paced, most consistent offenses in just making sure they get their good shots, the shots that they want, and just getting out there. So it's going to be interesting to see this. Now, this season, Florida State is a total of 8-17 at the spread and 0-7-1 in their last 8 games, whereas Boston College is actually 5-1 at covering the spread in their last 6, and they are 4-0 in their last 4, coming off of a loss, which is pretty great. So it's looking pretty decent for them. Now, they do have an 8-5 record at home compared to a 1-9 record on the road. So Boston College is a severely better home team than they are a road team. And they are playing in Boston, which is actually looking pretty good for them. If Boston College can limit those turnovers and keep the pace a little bit slow, it should be a fairly easy game for the Eagles because of those injuries. Florida State, in my opinion at least, just eyeball tested these two teams, has just looked a lot worse than Boston College. Boston College has actually looked relatively decent. They've still been able to move the ball. They've still been able to keep the pace and play relatively okay defense. And because of how bad of three-point defense Florida State is, if they can find a few ways to hit some threes from beyond the arc, it could look like a pretty easy win for Boston College out there. So I'm taking Boston College on the money line. They're only a 1-point favorite. You could also, take the spread out here. I think both of them are looking relatively okay for these two teams. I'm not jumping out saying that Boston College is probably going to take this, 6-7 points and just blow out Florida State. But I think that Florida State has really had a tough time dealing with these injuries, and I just don't see them picking it back up tonight. They started off as one of the best teams in the ACC, looking to get a bid into the NCAA tournament, and now they're looking like arguably one of the worst in the ACC. So it's not looking too good.
Yeah. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like maybe college sports might be the sport where injuries affect your team the most.
Yeah.
Like obviously in the NBA, you can lose LeBron. That's a massive, massive loss. But if you lose your best player in a college basketball team, the skill gap between your best guy and your seventh guy is going to be far greater than your first guy and your seventh guy on an NBA bench, right?
Yeah, I think the thing with Florida State as well is that they just really have a lot of depth, but it seems like this season the depth really hasn't been as good at producing as in previous years. So normally Florida State is one of the few teams that, like most college basketball teams, try to run like a 8-9 man rotation. There's been several years where Florida State's running an 11 to 12 man rotation, but it seems like this year those guys that are coming off the bench just really aren't producing as at high of a level as the previous years. So getting that one guy injured, it means that these other guys who are usually only taking 10 shots a game, now if they put up 15, 20, and that just extra usage that they're getting just isn't translating into better efficiency, and it's just been really tough on the offensive end for them.
Yeah, no, I like the Boston College play here. The only thing that would concern me was in a slower paced game like that is the height on the Florida State side.
Yeah.
But other than that, that looks like a Boston College rolls at home. Hardest thing to
Yep.
do in college sports, go on the road and win. So
All
I'll
right.
take that.
All right. So, again, there are still a lot of other games that we do have out here. There's a bunch of ones that look good, and there's some still interesting games out there if you're looking to look for it. Again, check out this Ohio State-Indiana game if you can. It's going to be a really nice game. Baylor versus Oklahoma State. It's going to be another one. But with Baylor dealing with key injuries, I just didn't really like this pick. UCLA, Arizona State. Again, you heard Jerry. He's not really too impressed with the NHL picks, but we're going to switch over to a quick little screen showing you guys our picks for the day so you guys can decide whether or not you want to put them out yourself. We'll be there in a second. All right, so here are today's picks all set and done. We have Ohio State -6.5 versus Indiana at a -114. Bruins team total under 2.5, -104. Kraken team total under 2.5 at -113. And Boston College +1 versus Florida State at -110 for the Pitch Your Pick daily podcast picks. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this one. Again, I'm Joe, and that over there, that beautiful man over there is Jared. Join us tomorrow on the Pitch Your Pick podcast. We'll do this all over again and have a wonderful time, and can't wait for that NBA to come back. We will see you guys next time.